When you hear the title Cat Quest, what do you think of? A cat knocking every freaking thing possible off of a table? The pitter-patter of rampaging paws as they attempt to wake you up at 3 a.m. during a case of the zoomies? The challenge of putting their ass in your face as many times as possible? Well, for the game titled Cat Quest, which happens to be this week's review, it's none of the above. The opening scene of Cat Quest is pretty basic in nature, but it gets the story across. You play as a nameless kitty who was riding in a boat in a storm. Along with him was his sister, who gets taken by another feline named Dracoth. Your warrior is washed up on the shore, and he is greeted by a cat fairy named Spurry. You now set out on a quest to find your sister and solve other random problems that you may encounter. Okay, before we continue, I gotta say, this game is beautiful in a very simplistic kind of way. The world map is just that, a map. Your cat walks around this large land with actual names of areas written in plain text. Small hamlets look like props in a board game, and various monsters will float around, not unlike an MMORPG. The hero is not drawn in full 3D, and instead looks almost like a piece you might move along a board. So I guess it's safe to compare this to a well-illustrated board game board, which I approve. And secondly, is it me, or does your fairy navigator Spurry look like a feline twin to Kirby? Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. Anyway, gameplay comes down to a simple hack and slash mechanic. Your character roams the land, slashing at creatures to defeat them. Slain creatures drop XP and gold pickups, which makes things a bit unusual since experience isn't automatically gained from success in combat. But that's fine, as it's easy enough to grab these icons. There isn't a lot of animation with your opponents, as they usually attack with physical strikes denoted by a gradually filling circle. Once it is completely filled, the enemy just kinda plops downwards, and if you are too close, you take damage. Your cat has a simple evasion roll, performed by pressing a single key, and this is how you will escape attacks, so hit and run mechanics will be used frequently. Also used often will be your magic abilities. Your hero gets access to 7 spells, with 4 of them able to be assigned at one time. These range from a healing spell to cure wounds, fire to set enemies alight for prolonged damage and drop defense, spikes to cause consistent pain to enemies that don't want to move out of the way, and other various attacks. With most of your other attack spells, the strikes are in specific directions. The lightning will always be flung to your left and right. Ice will freeze opponents that were aligned vertically to you. This is something to keep in mind when utilizing these skills. In addition to this, your magic power does not replenish automatically. Instead, every time you strike a foe, you get a portion of your MP back. This is a system that works very well for this kind of game, as there are no potions that you can encounter. There are, however, rest spots that you can find in the land. By using these, your cat will flop over and take a cat nap, bringing your health and magic back to its maximum levels. I still laugh at the cat just plopping over like this. Although there are no potions, there is an inventory system. This is relegated to your equipment, which is separated into weapons, armor, and helmets. Each of these further assists in 4 different stats: maximum life, magic power, weapon strength, and armor points. Many pieces of equipment sacrifice one stat for another, so choosing your clothing may depend on your playstyle. In addition, finding more copies of the same piece of equipment will upgrade it. I like this idea, and it helps prevent an overly complicated amount of loot to find. Not finding the equipment that suits your style? Well, you can always try the blacksmith, but even this isn't guaranteed. The blacksmith in Cat Quest resembles a loot chest mechanic, in that you spend either 500 or 5,000 gold to obtain a random item. I've only tried the higher valued chest twice or so, and neither time did I get a piece of gear that wowed me, so try it at your own risk. But it's not like there's a lot of stuff to spend money on in this game. In fact, you only ever use gold at the blacksmith and to power up your magical abilities. So you decide which is more worth your coin. I will admit that the way armor points work in Cat Quest feels a bit wonky at times. It acts like a rechargeable protective shield. As long as you have armor points, any damage will be absorbed by those, with any excess then going to your health. After a few seconds of not taking additional strikes, your armor points begin to recharge. If you do not have full health, though, it seems like your armor will only regenerate back to the percentage of your life. It just feels a bit weird as a mechanic. Back to the enemies and their magic. They have access to the same spells that your furball does, so once you understand this, it gets easier to evade possible blasts. Only enemies later in the game will cast multiple spells, so at the start, You will know certain enemies will only cast fire, some will only attempt to fry you with electricity, and so on. There are also some enemies that take more damage from either magic or physical weapons. Most of these enemies don't pose much of a threat though. On the other hand, some enemies will have a skull next to their life meter, designating that maybe you shouldn't be taking these guys on. Also, this enemy here is the worst, as they constantly counter your attacks with a spell that creates spikes on the ground. These spikes don't do a lot of damage, but they are an annoyance. Now, I mentioned that you'll be running into quests, and there's quite a few of them. Each has a recommended level, but you can ignore this if you just want a challenge. Each questline also has multiple stages, with large amounts of experience and gold, with occasional equipment thrown in, awarded to you after every stage. Most of these are very basic in nature. Start the quest, talk to a cat, go to point B, slay a few creatures, return to the quest giver. At times, you'll have to enter one of many caverns that you'll encounter. Like quests, there are recommended levels for each of these dungeons. When you enter one, you are brought to a small area filled with creatures. There are also wooden and golden chests. Wooden chests provide you with extra equipment, and golden ones? Well, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. These require a key to open, and after completing the game, I still haven't found a key. I don't think I was missing any quests, but there were some higher level dungeons that I didn't explore, from ranges of level 80 and up. I ended the game around level 55 or so, and even that doesn't take too terribly long to reach, as XP is awarded generously in late game quests. I tried the Soul level 200 dungeon and got demolished by a simple rat that reminded me of the deadly rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Is it in the chest behind it? I can't open it until nearby creatures are slain, so I do not know. Anyway, because of the repetitive nature of these quests, you might think that you would end up skipping them, but that wasn't the case for me. The writing of the game is superb, leading to plenty of cat-related puns. There were more than a few times I chuckled at some of the lines. Plus, many of these quests take less than 5 minutes to complete, so you aren't wasting a lot of time away from your main journey. However, there are a few side quests that are mandatory for you to progress. 2 of them allow you to move around the world to areas that you weren't originally able to access, like water walking and flying over withered plants. The water walking is much more useful, as there are a lot more areas that you'll access once you obtain this ability. There are only about 2 or 3 areas that you'll run across where you actually need to fly to them, but it does allow you to skip battles if you choose to, so I guess there's that. When you get down to it, Cat Quest is just a solidly made, fun game. Don't let the basic look fool you. The game is addictive. Once I started, I completed it quickly, probably going through 80% or so of the dungeons and finishing every quest, I think. Sure, the quests do get a bit monotonous in design after a while, but at least the game's conversations keep the repetition enjoyable. If you enjoy the 2D style Zelda games and want something semi-casual and relaxing, Cat Quest is a good pick. I'll have to pick up the sequel at some point because I can use more of the same. Until then though, Cat Quest is a great start to what I hope becomes a lengthy series. Final score? 6 out of 7. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.